behind me is a slide of 4 children looking out on an athletic field. And basically, part of my story is to say that I don't know why they call it the game of life, because we're all at different playing levels. What I'm going to go through now, at my 71 years of age, is to tell you, and hopefully I'm going to leave you with a hopeful message. I'm going to tell you about my life, and it's really the first time that I have ever done this. So bear with me if I trip around a bit in it, because it is 71 years, and I got a lot more years than a lot of these kids here. They're thinking about 20 years or 25 years. I'm thinking of 70, 71 to be exact. I was born in 1945 in West Warwick, Rhode Island, a mill town. How many know it? All right. Very proud of that. It was an immigrant melting pot. So therefore, we had a lot of interaction. My family was a family of superstars. I didn't really know it at the time because nobody really knows about their family. My father was a semi-professional football player. He was a coach. Then he was a physics and chemistry person, then a teacher, a vice principal, and a principal. My brothers were superstars, 2 of them, 2 older brothers. They topped out in every category. They got valedictorian, they got Adultare Dei. If you're Catholic, you know that one. Boy Scout, Eagle Scouts, everything you can conceive of. I was 3rd born, a girl. My father wanted an Irish dynasty. He got it through 2. I was supposed to be Colleen Kelly. I'm Colleen. It didn't look good for me, especially when Dad said, girls can't do math and science. Girls are really inferior, basically. That was the message I was getting to men. I bristled at that inequity. But then I had those superstars in my family. And over that time period, it was especially important. I was internalizing all of this. And remember, I mean, we had, in my generation, we had Leave It to Beaver. Barbara Billingsley did housework in her pump heels and her dress and her beads. And she waited till Ward came home later to do the important stuff. And then, of course, we had I Dream of Jeannie was another one. So what we grew up with, and then there was the Father Knows Best. All right, that was the corker. All right, so we grew up in our generation with men really disinclined to think that women were equals. After this, I went to college. I was one of the lucky ones. I went to college. And I got a degree in teaching, and then I went into teaching. And I was very good at that. And then basically, at 23, I got married. And at 25, I left that volatile, terribly abusive relationship in the middle of the night with a 5-month-old baby strapped to my hip and got in a car with 190,000 miles on it that broke down 2 and 3 times a week. This was a devastating period of time for me. I then brought that daughter up for 6 years in an apartment where I was the single sole parent, and it was before deadbeat dads, and I did this. I brought her to daycare every day. There were very few in that period. So I had to do all of this alone. 6 years later, I married again. This was a worse situation. I was even steeped in more difficulty. I thought I was doing the right thing. This was a very politically connected person. And yet, I was in the midst of the direst straits of my life. I went on at that point for 4 years we had another child, and now I had 2 daughters that were 10 years apart in age, still teaching. And in the 6th year, the man that I was married to had a heart attack, and then 8 weeks later, he was diagnosed with cancer, lung into the bones. So at that point, I had to put aside my own feelings and see him through that illness. That period was perhaps one of the lowest in my life. I had endured such tragedy before that time, but it seemed to get deeper and deeper. After he died, a year later, because what we tend to do is we process things, it takes us a while. And I processed that over the course of the year. And then I took my daughters on a European trip. I decided I had to find myself. And in doing this, I backpacked and took them through 5 countries on a 7-week expedition. This was me at 41 years of age. I don't know if you can see it that well. But in any case, we went through Italy, Austria, Switzerland, France, and Spain. I needed to do this for myself. I needed to find, like they say on the airlines, when you have to take the oxygen and you have to put it in your own face first before you can help your children. I needed to do that in order to get us to the next level. After I did that trip, I came home, I wrote it up, I started sending out to newspapers. They were publishing my material. I was doing very well. After that period, I would teach for 30 years. I would finish it, 23 years in junior high, a period that I called running with the wolves. They were crazy, and I was crazy. I went 7 years later, I went into the high school, and I basically felt they're just bigger packages. So I had done that as well. After that, I met the man I would spend the next 26 years with in a nurturing, excellent relationship. And I found that for the first time. And then my daughters went on to college. One went through Carnegie Mellon. Another one went to McGill University. After this, I went into real estate. And in my 4th year, I was making $150,000 a year. So basically now I had the girl that couldn't do figures and math was now bringing home 6 figures. I wrote those stories up as well, and I went around, and those were published in local papers as well. After that, Paul and I went to North Carolina. And, oh, I skipped a part, I'm sorry. Going back in the beginning hard, I told you to remember all of the events of life. I had breast cancer. I know, geez. And then I had to go through 3 surgeries, and I wrote the cover story on breast cancer that was in the newspapers, and it went all over Rhode Island and Massachusetts. And that was I Got the News, All Women Dread. So I was getting more and more publication out there. I was doing more things that would make me believe in myself. And then 6 years ago, we in North Carolina, Paul and I, had bought a retirement home. And in that retirement home in North Carolina, in Asheville, we were having a wonderful life. And then he had an accident. He was hit by a 12-year-old girl driving a GMC truck. He broke his neck. The next day he died on swelling. They brought him back with the paddles. We came through 2 years following that. And in that 2-year period, we wrote the Grandpa and the Truck stories for little kids. So this was, again, a way of coming out of the horror of what had occurred. We took the crises of life and we turned those crises into positives. And that has been my story that I've done. Taken what I could, made something into it, and changed it. So basically, I want to leave you with the message that no matter how many terrible crises you go through, you can always reconstitute. You can always come up from that. I know that because this is what I did in my life. Today, I am a published author, a writer of many articles. I'll have a book coming out that is based on our Asheville experience. And I will write the book in the shadow of princes. So thank you.